An open letter to Congresswoman Greene. Now, I fully understand that you're very busy. You've got a lot of things in your sight. I understand, I appreciate it. I may not always understand them or agree, but I'd like to engage. In fact, I'd like to start by engaging you in a brief sort of discussion about a radical, extremely radical concept, and that would be one of, well, let's put it this way, pulling together. Now, I understand you've got a lot of things you're not happy about, and you would like to effect change. But I'd like to know what those suggestions you have in mind are. Now, I know that you don't believe the COVID-19 science. I understand that, and I wish I could explain to you that belief has nothing to do with science. Okay, so it's acceptance. Now, let's take a look at something you said recently. Was prompted this video actually. Was you said that COVID-19 doesn't exist. You said that on the House floor. I was pretty amazed. So I want to go over a few things. How you've come to the conclusion, okay? And I know this is sorry that happened to you with Twitter, but pandemics have been a thing forever, okay? And even when Homo sapiens are off the planet, okay, there will still be pathogens, okay? So Mary Shelley, in her second novel, wrote about such a thing happening 200 years after her, which would be present day. It's pretty foreseeing actually, and but this was back in 1826, so I don't think we need to go back that far to sort of draw, let's say, example, experience, if you will, perspective. So I'd like to take you back to the Second World War, okay, and to share this radical concept about pulling together, because you know, my ancestors, most everyone's ancestors alive in the mid 20th century had to suffer during that period of time. Now, people would queue up to go to shops to get whatever they could, and there wasn't much of anything. So despite the disdain for such a policy, rationing had to be the sort of cause of the day. And the reason for that is, well, by rationing, everybody got a bit of whatever was in the shops, right? So rationing did safeguard your share, whatever size it was. You got a share of things in the shops, bacon, whatever, okay, eggs, so forth. And so today, a mask, I would like to draw a comparison for you, also does that. It safeguards your life. And so I really would think that it's a lesson to be learned here, just reflecting upon the past. Now, that rationing period just reduced what people could have during that period because supplies were short. And this is something that was amazing. Nobody liked it. You had to carry cards to let that signal what you could get, how much you've gotten, and so forth, to let people know that you got your share or not. And this lasted for 15 years, from 1939 in September, when Hitler marched into Poland and thus started the Second World War. It lasted the full 6 years of the war and also 9 years of Reconstruction. It's pretty impressive. But I'd like to contend that that's an example of pulling together. Whether we liked it or not, or they liked it or not, it had to be done. And so rationing, like today's day, we have to wear a mask, it was the right thing to do. Now, today, coronavirus is the world's enemy, without question. Okay? And it's not just the world, the world is being inflicted with this pandemic, and it's just really quite tragic. It's the present enemy of the day. And so, without sort of policies, things get out of hand. So early on, in American shops, there was a panic, and this was never any good, and shelves are cleared. Now, I was most impressed to see that there was an American shop called Trader Joe's. And initially, straight away, well, actually, without hesitation, they put up signs and said, look, we're in this together, you gotta face it, okay? And so what you need to do is you can only buy 2 of one single item at a time. Additionally, you had to queue up outside of the shop because they were limiting the amount of people for social distancing as a rule. Very great. So I'm going to say to Joe's, well done, Trader Joe's. Well done. Now, to draw further comparison, the American Civil War had 620,000 deaths. It's tragic, right? The Americans finally got into the First World War in 1917. And by 1919, at the end of that conflict, there were 518,000 US soldier deaths. That's just not good. And then, of course, US soldiers and allies got together and they lost 282,000 people in that conflict. It's just tragic. But I have to say that on the 31st of January, something really surprising occurred. And that was that there were 883,000 deaths in the US alone to COVID. There were 5.66 million due to COVID worldwide. That is a tragedy. And if you want to state that, and I'm okay if you want to state that COVID doesn't exist, I just need evidence. All right? I would love to hear further sort of explanation as to that statement. Now, because of COVID and all these deaths, I insist that the world be vaccinated. And there's a good reason for that, because once inside, the virus will change. It will be given a host, a body to thrive in. And thus it will change. And those change we call mutations. That's just how it is. And so we don't presently like to think of pandemics and things like that, because those are plagues of the past. But I have to tell you, these things do come back time and time again. And it's a matter of fact, the plague, okay, we refer to it as a plague, but there's different types of plagues. There's bubonic, there's septicemic, and pneumonic. Okay? And we all know about the bubonic plague. However, there are 3 kinds, and it will return. Now, the 3rd plague actually hit America in the year 1900. It's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. 3rd wave really arrived strongly. And the CDC talks about it, but it also reminds us that in Los Angeles, of all places, in 1924 and 25, it returned. Is amazing, and it spread through all Western America. It's quite impressive, to see that. It's impressive to see that the virus would just keep mutating and reoccurring. It's just pretty shocking. And so these 2 antibiotics, okay, these antibiotics did not arrive. Streptomycin and gentamicin, they did not arrive until 1943. And these things will definitely rid the plague. However, what was done before then was to wear a mask, wear gloves, all that. You just had to do it. Didn't like rationing, didn't want to, but you had to, okay? And you also had to get vaccinated. To get vaccinated in 1919, it was just the right thing to do. People queued up, wore masks, and got their jabs because it was a demonstration of pulling together. We're not concerned with one person alone. We're concerned with everyone. And then, of course, these things arrive. It's just going to be something we have to deal with forever. Polio comes around in 1950. Okay. People did the same thing. They queued up, they got their jabs, and they pulled together. And the reason for this, you must get everybody vaccinated. Otherwise, it will find somewhere to live. and thrive and then mutate. Now, Washington understood that. George Washington, American general, early in the nation's history, he mandated that all troops got vaccinated. Well done him. And I hear there's a lot of crying about vaccination of children and so forth, but look, it's a thing. It has been forever. And most importantly, you can't get into school unless the students' vaccinations are up to date. And that is a bit, unthinking, pulling together, but you must. Now, you claimed in regards to students, you spoke about the polio jab that you had gotten. You said you were on the Congress floor recently and stated that you had your jab for polio. This came up because you're concerned about having to get boosters. And so you said, well, we need to keep getting them. Well, look, it's been a thing forever, okay? You probably don't remember getting 4, but you probably got 4, okay, early on in your life. By 6-year-old, all creatures have to get vaccinated for polio in America, elsewhere in Western nations. Now, there are a lot of people who did not, conservative programming hosts, presenters, and so forth, that did not want to agree with any of the mandates, and of course they died. Now, I'm not happy about this. I disagree with them wholeheartedly. Okay, I would never agree with this nonsense, but again, they don't think it's nonsense, so it's a bit harsh for me to say that, but nevertheless, I want to say, when I see you and see the brilliant, she's in the airport, she's got a mask on, well done her, well done. However, simultaneously, you started tweeting out things that conflict that. You stated that there were too many reports of COVID vaccinations killing and getting people sick. Okay, well, okay. Then there was the other claim that viruses and masks do not stop, okay, the spread. So I have the question again is, where's your credible evidence, right? So you see, surgeons have been using masks for a long time, okay, forever. Okay. Now the reason they do so is they don't want to drop anything into the body. Now, granted, if something should spray out of the body, it protects them, but they're more concerned about protecting others. If they should accidentally spray or whatever, it won't get into the patient. Okay, thus it creates a barrier. Okay. Now, I heard you say that masks don't work. So I just saw your tweet that masks don't work. But I guarantee, if anyone wears a mask and spits into it, okay, it won't go anywhere. Thus, a barrier exists. Now, if you can prove to me otherwise, great. Give us evidence. That'd be brilliant. I'd love it. So, you further went on in that same tweet to say that mandates and passports violate vaccine mandates and passports specifically. They violate individual freedoms. Well, let's discuss that. Okay. There are a lot of people that agree with you. They say things like, our freedom, is threatened by the mandates and vaccines, and that COVID testing is a scam, and I want to see the evidence for that, obviously. And this particular sign tells us that when there's a risk, we need to have the choice to risk our lives, or whatever it is. I don't know what specifically they're saying with choice, but I have to tell you, if you have a child and you put that child in the car, it's not a choice, okay? When you put travel in the car with a child, there is a risk, okay? Thus, you have mandated to buckle the child up. That's it. And I think it's a good thing. So, if you're going to claim things like number of deaths due to vaccination, right? Well, you gotta supply evidence. You just can't say it. A sign is not evidence. And so I'm just gonna bang on about evidence. So I've seen more of this stuff. Now, these are people who work in aviation, and they're claiming that if there's a risk, there's a choice. Same rhetoric, and then of course, violates all kinds of freedoms. Well, I want to point out that COVID doesn't give a toss about your freedom, right? I mean, it doesn't. All these people that we just discussed, COVID violated their freedom. Not the vaccine or the mandates. No, that didn't violate your freedom. The mandates are there to sort of preserve your freedom. And in fact, COVID took it away because those people actually died from COVID. Now, we carry on with these people doing these, conducting these protests. However, though, I consider them egoid because they're only interested in emotion rather than actual science or evidence. And thus it carries on, and I understand there's a lot of fuel for that. People don't like it. I don't like it either. We didn't like rationing. We don't like having to wear masks, but it's a little bother actually. But nevertheless, I would say that these people claim to be awakened, but they're actually somnambulists. Okay.
Is a very good drug. Its safetiness has been proven for decades. It even won a Nobel Peace Prize, and it is absolutely irresponsible for the Biden administration, the CDC, Dr. Fauci, and any of these doctors to be advising people to not prescribe it.
Okay, firstly, Peace Prize, I know you misspoke, probably, no doubt, misspoke, but that's a big oops. Okay, sorry, but it is, right? Now let's be clear about things, right? Actual fact here, okay? So, ivermectin, which you've singled out, a lot of people have singled out, it's not just you, is actually part of a family from avermectin, which actually won the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine. Now, there are other categories of award, physics, chemistry, economics, and the Peace Prize, but it did not win it, okay? Now, the entire family of drugs, okay, won it, not specifically the one. And I must say that all doctors, actual MDs, have pointed out that it's only for parasites in animals. Now, they have used it on humans, but it's predominantly topically applied for parasites. And there is no prescribed use for viruses at all. So back to your video clip there where you say irresponsible. Well, I want to talk to you about irresponsible. I'm not sure that you're meant to be, but I contend that you might be. Or I might have been, because doctors are qualified to give medical advice. You are not. And you can do it, but you don't have the qualifications for it. And you can't claim COVID doesn't exist without evidence. So I'm going to suggest rethink that statement about responsibility. Now, on the 15th of August 2021, I noted that there were 620,000 deaths in the US alone to COVID. That took me by surprise because it's the exact same number of the American Civil War from 1865. Then later in September, I noticed it started to spike back up because of the Omicron. Then the 15th of October, there were 767 deaths in the US alone. That is 147 deaths, or 740,000 deaths in 2 months. So I kept track. By Christmas Eve, there were 814,000 deaths. It's crazy. And then, of course, as 2022 began, there were 836,000 deaths. Now I kept track. A week later, there's 849,000. Roughly 2 weeks later, there was 833. The 31st of January, 833,000. So I did some further look, and I noticed something. Right? So I went to some medical universities in your state of Georgia, and both of them had released these numbers that 98% of people dying due to COVID were unvaccinated. So if you tell me these numbers are in error, that'd be great. Let me see it. You just can't say things or believe things. I need evidence. So you stated this, I understand. This is a sign you posted during another debate of some kind. But I just disagree with that, okay? You say trust the science in that regard, okay? But hang on. Do you really trust science? Because in 2021, you said, I don't believe in evolution. I don't believe in that type of so-called science. I believe in God, okay? Well, God is not science, okay? So you can't have it both ways. I guess you can, but you have to back that up. So let me put it to you another way. Again, viruses mutate. They change in the body. The gradual development of something, particularly a simple form to more complex form, right? Different variations, Omicron and so forth, right? Well, that is the very definition of evolution, okay? It's not so-called science. It's just referring to change. Now, as we know, that COVID has been mutating or changing or evolving for months, and this is what we have to contend with, okay? And so today we have BA2, which is another variation of the Omicron virus, and so it wreaked havoc everywhere, particularly in India. You can see that this particular batch of people, this community, society has been hit hard by it. It's because this virus is, without something to combat it in the body, they will mutate. That's something we just must face. And this is really quite shocking. It reminds me of these old adverts I used to see as a child where heavy smokers would develop these lungs. Well, long COVID, long suffering COVID, particularly in people who have immune deficiencies and so forth, their lungs will deteriorate. And so again, science, okay, these things we know through hard study, is none to do with belief, okay? And so Galileo was a massive academic, the father of astronomy and science, so forth. He was studying the stars, but the church said, oh no, we can't have this, okay? We can't have what you decided. So that's madness. But again, they said, okay, offer this head. But I'm thinking, hang on, what about thou shalt not kill? It's from the Bible. So sorry, I'm confused about that. Because we must understand, okay, again, science is detective work. You have to let the evidence lead to whatever conclusion. And why is that? Because the survival of the species is what is important. And thus we conduct research. Now you might say, oh, research, okay, what was it? What do you mean, really? Actually, we just Google it. Well, okay, let's do that. Google, is this really research? No, it's not, okay? For example, you can put anything in a Google search engine and have a go, and it'll bring up stuff. So it says, no, and the Earth is roughly a sphere, okay? Well, I'm going to say, okay, I know that it is. However, this is not evidence enough. Now, we have these other people citing things here, but we don't know two things: who these people are and how they are qualified. So even if one is to go to Cambridge University, I still have to know who these writers or researchers are and how they are qualified. Same with Oxford. It doesn't matter the institution. We have to double and triple check, investigate, be a detective. So keep in mind that there are two halves to research. Qualitative means methodical observation and review of the data. Quantitative refers to mathematical measurements and so forth. And then review the calculations. There's experimentation upon this. And then all of it is peer reviewed. And then it should be repeatable. So whenever one delves into any subject matter, you got to approach it with an unbiased approach to research at credible institutions, MIT, so forth and so forth, because you have to know your stuff before you talk about it, and you prepare for people to challenge you. And I agree, we all should, right? If someone says, I don't like this, well, tell me why. Why specifically? It's not something you believe, it's something you know from credible research. So when you see people on air pointing out that YouTube and other organizations are going to sort of block people because they're spreading misinformation, it's not an attack on a person. It's about pulling together. Because if you believe something, you can say whatever you like, but you can't lead people down the wrong path. And so these things are easy to do. Just simply go to credible sites. So I went to the CD website on the 6th of February, and I noticed, brilliant, cases are going down, but simultaneously the deaths were going up. How is that possible? Well, people were finally dying from long COVID or having it for quite a while, and it's really not really fun. So I noticed something on the 7th of February 2022, we had reached 904,000 dead in the US alone. And then the day later, there were 907. What? That's 3,000 in one day. And this is in February of 2022. So I wanted to remind everybody to this parallel I've been drawing to the Second World War. In Britain, people in London in particular, families got together and huddled in the tube, the underground train network. And that was a brilliant thing to do. I mean, you had to. And they also sent children to live in the countryside with strangers who promised to keep care for them. And that was a way of pulling together. It was a brilliant thing to do. And so I would like to suggest to you that we stay masked up, okay, for when we get the all clear from all organizations, CDC, the WHO, all of that stuff, okay? Now, I know you don't like the notion of masking children, but do understand, okay? A child can handle it, for the most part, better than an aging adult, okay? But you see, if there's a virus that mutates within the child, that can spread to an adult. Imagine grandparents being infected because of their grandchild. And Omicron did not do many a child any favors. In fact, there were many ill children. So I want to remind you that viruses mutate. In other words, trust the science, because things evolved. So again, really quickly, I'll try to get through this. The 10th of February, there was 912 dead. It's pretty shocking. On the 12th, a couple days later, there was 918. Wait. What? Wow. That's 6,000 in 2 days? Oh my God, that's shocking. So a couple of days later, on the 14th, up to 921. On the 15th of February, I noted state, okay, 924,000, 15th of February 2022. That takes me back to the 15th of August. That leads me to realize that there were 304,000 deaths in the US in 6 months. Now, if you tell me this is false, fine. Prove it. I mean, if you contend something, you must supply evidence. A couple days later, it keeps going. Same word. We still have a mounting death count. And this is I'm just looking at US numbers, okay? 22nd. Now, it's a very easy thing to do, to find this bit of research. You can even use Google. Just Google number of deaths in the US from COVID and it'll come up with your numbers. And here we are on the 24th of February, 943,000 dead, okay? Now, you can see it climbing a couple more, and then the 1st of March, boom, up to 951. It's nearly 1 million. There's three more thousand. It's crazy. So I would like to suggest to you that you accept, or at least try to participate in pulling together. Because getting jabbed and getting masked, these are minor things. And then, of course, the 11th of March happened, and it really threw me, because it turns out that cases are going up again. This is like 2 weeks after mandates were removed or sort of eased. And so in Europe and in Britain, they're going up. This is really shocking here. On the 11th of March, 46% increase in the UK. And then, of course, some more too. The WebMD talks about it at length in their article. Now, subsequently, in other parts of the world, South Korea, a shocking rise. Vietnam, a similar scenario. Germany, on the way up again. And France, same thing. It dropped, but then, oh gosh, it's inching up. It's crazy. And then, of course, Italy, also following suit. Okay, so this type of thing is really amazing. But then we get to the 15th of March, and we reach 6 million deaths worldwide. That's shame on us. Okay. And then, of course, 23rd of March, we can see that there are still basically an average of 854 deaths a day. So I say enough. I suggest to you enough. Now again, we can go and find out more than we can from proper organizations. It's just it. COVID exists, and we must do everything we can in order to battle back. So I would suggest putting on a mask and do it, because we need to pull together. And there you are. So I thank you for your time. Stay healthy, stay masked, get evidence. Thank you so much.